Sorin commanded Dexter to scout the other side of the hill, past where he and Vekni encountered Lacius and Vivalina. Dexter observed shattered wagons and rotting corpses down the steep cliff. Sorin then casted mage armor to prepare himself for the remainder of this battle, as well as the battles to come in this dangerous bog. Vekni slashed Vivalina with her whip and infused the strike with ki for a stunning strike. Sorin casted silvery barbs, forcing Fival to succumb to the ability. The injured creature glowed and appeared to become slightly healthier. Sorin nailed Vivalina with Tasha's mind whip, further debilitating the stunned beast. Vekni stunned the creature with 2 more whip slashes and a knee to the chest. Leone glowed and appeared slightly healthier, finally free and able to act, but still under Sorin's mind whip spell. Leone casted its own spell. Blue light formed in the creature's hands, and it pushed the magic towards Vekni. Before seeing what Fival's spell did, Sorin casted counterspell. Sorin failed to stop the blue beast's ability, and a ball of cold magic slammed into Vekni's chest. A terrible chill twisted through Vekni's body as she took critical cold damage. Sorin casted Tasha's mind whip on Vivalina again. Vekni hurled Ignis at the creature, piercing the beast and dealing lightning damage. She followed up, striking the creature again and again, infusing more ki to stun it. Immediately after, Vivalina glowed and appeared to recover from some of the damage. Sorin affected the creature with another Tasha's mind whip spell. Vekni delivered another combination of attacks to Vivalina, but when it was all said and done, the monstrous creature still stood, able to fight. Vivalina threw a glaive at Vekni, but missed. The creature wanted to continue attacking, but Tasha's mind whip kept it debilitated and unable to do more things. Sorin held up his wand and said, "Get fucked!" Sorin's voice radiated in the beast's head, tearing through its mind and destroying each and every nerve ending. Vivalina fell dead into the muck of Epona's bog. Sorin and Vekni searched both deceased creatures and found a potion of healing on each of them, as well as a total of 500 gold. Susie, a little girl with a group of peasants, commented on how Epona's bog was a dangerous place after witnessing Vivalina and Lacius transform into monstrous blue beasts and attempting to kill Vekni and Sorin. Vekni asked Susie's papa, the same man that rewarded her with alcohol a short time earlier for helping with the wagon, to stay close by while she and Sorin rested. Jerdrin, Briston, Christo, and Mary Kate relaxed with the group as well, while Vekni slumped down against the wagon and began to doze off. Sorin ritual casted alarm and took watch. A short while into Vekni's rest, Sorin's alarm activated, and he detected creatures coming through the area of his spell. Sorin alerted his companions that something was coming. He turned back in the direction of the threat and observed 5 large snakes and 2 crocodiles heading towards them. Sorin launched a fireball at the approaching creatures with his last remaining spell slot. A blazing inferno torched the beasts, killing the snakes and harming the 2 crocs. One of the crocodiles rapidly swam towards Susie and opened its mouth wide. The beast clamped its powerful jaws over the girl and ripped her head off. Blood pumped out of the large wound and she collapsed to the mucky ground. Sorin casted Mind Sliver on the crocodile that murdered poor Susie. The wounded creature could not survive the psychic attack, and its small brain exploded inside its skull. The other crocodile opened its mouth wide and bit down hard on a male peasant. The beast pulled and savaged on the man until his head and neck tore away from the man's body, spraying fountains of blood into the thick muck. Sorin's Mind Sliver cantrip dispatched the last crocodile. Due to Sorin's quick thinking, and some tanking by little Susie, Vekni was able to complete her short rest. Sorin began a long rest, while Vekni kept watch alongside Susie's father, Christo, Briston, Gerdrin, Mary Kate, and some peasants that the adventurers were not yet acquainted with. A few hours into the rest, Vekni observed a group of frog people approaching their position, with weapons drawn. Vekni fired a Kensai shot arrow at one of the advancing beasts, piercing its eye and exploding the creature's brain out the back of its head. Vekni yelled over to Sorin, advising him they were under attack. Sorin woke up as the creatures advanced on him. For some reason, Sorin was sleeping in front of the group, in an extremely vulnerable position. The frogmen hacked away at a trio of peasants in the front, slaughtering all three of them. One of the frogmen struck Sorin before he was able to stand after waking as well. Vekni leaped behind the frogmen and lashed at the one that attacked Sorin with her whip. Her whip wrapped around the beast's neck. The metal barbs of her weapon stuck into its throat. Vekni yanked hard on the handle, tearing out the frogman's jugular. Vekni turned to another frogman and lashed her whip at this foe as well. She dispatched the second creature in the same exact manner, ripping the jugular behind the soft, amphibious throat of her opponent. Vekni turned towards the third frogman and reeled back for a haymaker punch. She pushed her fist forward and plunged, knuckle deep, piercing through the beast's torso, killing it instantly. The frogmen stabbed at some of the peasants with their spears, causing some injuries, but failing to kill any of the defenseless non-combatants. Vekni quickly lashed out with her whip, slashing open one of the frogmen's stomachs. Entrails and blood spilled out of the wound, and the creature perished slowly and painfully. Vekni slashed deeply into the chest of another frogman. While it was reeling over, she uppercutted through the chest wound and into its head, killing the beast. The remaining frogmen kept up their attack, stabbing at members of Sorin and Vekni's group with spears and biting at them. 2 more peasants fell dead, and Sorin suffered damage as well. Vekni's whip lashed out and penetrated one of the creature's mouths. The metal barbs sunk in and stuck to the beast's gums. Vekni yanked on her whip, tearing the barbs through the frogman's cheek with great force, whipping his head around with a sickening, ripping sound. The creature fell dead to the ground with a broken neck. Vekni expertly twirled her whip and snapped it out towards the head of a yellow frogman. The whip barbs latched onto the creature's left eyeball, and Vekni deftly yanked the eye from the beast's socket. The creature dropped dead, like the others. Vekni ran to the back of a red frogman and sunk her fist deep into its torso. She yanked her hand out and found it to be covered in thick viscera. The creature toppled over, dead. Sorin nailed one of the frogmen with Mind Sliver, causing psychic damage and affecting its ability to fight. 3 of the frogmen attacked Vekni, 2 of which pincered her and had the female pirate flanked. One of them stabbed her with its spear. Vekni whipped one of the frogmen twice. The second whip slash caught onto the beast's tongue and ripped it out of the creature's mouth. The frogman fell dead. Vekni punched the frogman Sorin Mind Slivered in the stomach. The beast collapsed to the ground and perished from its injuries. Sorin attacked the last remaining frogman with his Mind Sliver spell, dealing considerable psychic damage. He rushed to the reeling beast's side and stabbed at it with his dagger, while he and Vekni had the creature flanked. Sorin missed, however, and the beast turned towards Sorin and attacked with its spear. The frogman attacked twice, but missed the human wizard with both. Vekni lashed at the frogman with her whip, peeling the skin off his face, which was a painful, fatal blow. After the battle, Sorin introduced himself to the remaining peasants, which were comprised of 1 male, Herman, and 2 females. Vekni searched the bodies of the deceased peasants, which seemed to bother the sensibilities of the peasants that remained. Vekni recovered 30 gold and a potion of climbing amongst the corpses. One of the females, a young girl, petted Dexter's head and thanked Sorin for saving her from the beasts of the bog. Sorin advised the young girl that he and Vekni were devoted to protecting the innocent. Vekni and Sorin learned the three peasants were comprised of a father, Herman, the man's wife, Mabel, and a daughter, all of which delved into the bog to escape the war between Vigor and their enemies. Vekni gave Herman the 30 gold she acquired from his deceased companions. He told Vekni she should keep it, but Vekni declined, stating she had enough gold already. Vekni and Herman spoke a bit about the state of the kingdom, Forte, and Epona's bog. The man told Vekni his wagon was pulled by donkeys, but alligators tore them apart a short distance from their present location. Herman stated several of his family members had perished in the bog already, and they had only traveled a short distance through it. He explained he and his family planned to settle in either a fry or the doghouse for safety from the war. Herman added he did not know specifically where to find either place. He continued he heard the doghouse was a safe place of peace, ran by a former hermit called the Medicine Man. Herman speculated the lizard folk might prefer the bog to be dangerous, as it made it difficult for outsiders to find their village. He added he had not seen a single lizard man since arriving in the bog. Vekni advised Herman to bring his family to Queensgrace for safety instead. Herman and his family kept watch while Sorin and Vekni rested. Vekni butchered a crocodile for meat while Sorin casted alarm prior to the duo resting. Upon awakening, Sorin scouted the area with Dexter. Sorin identified One Reaper's polearm and learned how it worked and what it could do. Herman and his family prepared to part ways with Vekni and Sorin. Sorin warned the man about blood mist, while Vekni advised him how to handle passing Lady Rose's riddles in White Fawn Forest. Vekni confided in Sorin she did not believe Herman and his family would survive the journey to reach Queen Inez and her people. Vekni and Sorin delved deeper into the bog, with Dexter on Sorin's shoulder so he could see in the dark. As Dexter scouted, he located a man-made hallway leading to a stone door inside a rock wall surrounded by trees. In front of the door was a closed chest. This hallway and door and chest were all surrounded by a small, murky pond. Vekni and Sorin returned to Herman, who was struggling to start a fire. She asked if he had any alcohol, and he provided her with a half bottle of bourbon and a mostly empty cask of ale. Sorin, Vekni, Herman, and Mabel finished off the cask of ale. Then, Sorin drank his last remaining potion of dark vision. Sorin and Vekni resumed their journey through the mucky swamp. Sorin casted invisibility on himself and Vekni, hoping to avoid some of the dangerous creatures Dexter had alerted him to. Vekni stepped through the muck, and her entire body sank through the wet ground. She submerged into mud and water and struggled to take in air. Vekni casted Shape Water to move water away from her face so she could breathe. Vekni attempted to swim upwards and out of the muck but failed to do so. Sorin casted Mold Earth and removed the dirt from the muddy water, allowing the adventurers to see clearly into the cavity. Vekni sank and became completely submerged in the water, very slowly beginning to drown. Seeing the water cavity was approximately 10 feet deep, Vekni casted Shape Water and created a 5-foot cube of ice beneath her feet so that she could stand on it. Sorin reached down and pulled Vekni from the water. Then he casted Mold Earth and removed all the dirt from her clothing. Vekni dried herself off with Shape Water, extracting all the moisture from her garments. The duo continued on, realizing the sinking muck hazard might be commonplace in the bog. Sorin and Vekni decided to alternate, using Mold Earth and Shape Water to make the ground in front of them completely solid for every 5 feet they traveled. Due to both adventurers casting multiple cantrips when dealing with the muck, they both lost their invisibility effect. Vekni and Sorin approached an opening near mucky water. Vekni used Shape Water to create a makeshift ice bridge so the two could cross. As the two crossed the pond-like area, Dexter heard croaking coming from underneath the water. The croaking sounded like it originated from multiple large-sized amphibians. Vekni continued across the pond with ice bridges. She drew her whip and thumbed the hilt of her sword as she neared closer to the origin of the croaking sounds. As a distraction, Sorin casted dancing lights and moved the bright light over past the pond, in between a group of trees on land up ahead. Immediately afterwards, the adventurers heard a skittering sound coming from that area. Sorin directed his dancing lights over to a rock wall and had it stop there, causing a lot of movement and audible skittering near the trees. A giant green amphibian frog head ascended from the water, and the eyes peered at the adventurers, then submerged back beneath the mucky water. While being extremely careful and meticulous, Vekni continued to create small ridges of ice so she and Sorin could cross the pond, without appearing aggressive or threatening to any creatures that might be under the water. Upon reaching land, the adventurers noticed fine webbing upon the trees. While moving around the area, Sorin casted mold earth on a patch of land that would have been another sinking muck hazard had someone stepped on it. Webbing shot out from behind Sorin and just barely missed him. A giant spider ran up behind Sorin and tried to bite him, but missed. 3 separate spiders fired webbing at Sorin and Vekni. 2 of the webs missed, but one hurtled directly at Vekni. She used her deflect missile's ability to knock the webbing out of the air, where it fell harmlessly to the mucky ground. As the battle continued, the adventurers found that areas of the muddy ground were covered in webbing and were difficult to walk through. Vekni ripped chunks of flesh from one of the giant spiders with 2 whip strikes. She infused ki into one of her whip strikes, stunning the beast. Vekni stomped down on one of the creature's legs, breaking it. Sorin casted fireball over the area of their battle, and the pond near the stone door. Trees in the radius caught aflame, and the thick webbing all around the battlefield melted. Sorin's spell killed a snake in the pond and badly burned 3 giant spiders. Sorin pulled out a dagger and attempted to stab the spider Vekni had attacked, but he slipped and fell in the muck. An agitated swarm of snakes ascended from the pond and slithered through the muck towards Vekni. The 2 giant spiders concealing themselves in trees were singed by the fires and were forced to drop from their locations. The beasts moved away from the fires towards a clearing, revealing themselves. Both spiders fired webs at Sorin, but neither struck him. Another spider moved to Sorin's side and opened its mouth to chomp down on the young wizard. Thinking quickly, Sorin casted Shield, and the creature's teeth clacked hard onto the magical barrier, leaving Sorin unharmed. Vekni pulled out a stick of dynamite and lit the wick with fire from a burning tree. She threw the dynamite behind the swarm of snakes, which exploded and damaged the creatures. Vekni stomped on the injured snakes, but found doing so was not especially effective. Vekni attempted to infuse ki for a stunning strike, but found the swarm could not be affected by that ability. Sorin plunged his dagger into the top of the stunned spider's head, then ripped downwards, tearing through the beast's eyes and splitting its face in half. The giant spider collapsed dead in the muck. Sorin casted Hypnotic Pattern in an area containing the swarm of snakes, 2 giant spiders, and Vekni Avumque. The swarm of snakes were immune to the effects of the spell. Sorin used his portent to force both spiders to become temporarily incapacitated by his spell. Lastly, Vekni failed to resist the hypnotic pattern and became incapacitated as well. The pile of snakes swarmed around Vekni's body, wrapping around and biting her. The only giant spider that was not currently stunned approached Sorin from behind. Sorin turned to face it. The spider bit Sorin's arm, injecting poison into his bloodstream. Vekni slipped out of the snake swarm and hurled Ignis at the spider that attacked Sorin. Lightning streaked across the battlefield, electrocuting the pile of snakes to death and slamming into the spider. An explosion of electricity rocked the spider, and it fell to the ground, smoking and dead. Sorin casted Mind Sliver on one of the incapacitated spiders. hurting its mind and breaking it free from the hypnotic pattern. Sorin slashed the beast with his dagger after he finished casting his spell. The spider, now able to fight, bit Vekni's leg and flooded her bloodstream with poison. Vekni maneuvered over to the spider, slashing it twice with her sword. She attempted to slash it a third time, but overexerted herself, and the physics of what her weapon could handle. Vekni shattered yet another sword, this time on the hard carapace of the giant spider before her. Sorin casted Mind Sliver on the giant spider, which affected the beast and damaged its mind. The wounded spider bit Vekni again, this time latching onto her left hip. The creature did not inject any poison into the High Elf pirate, however. Vekni lashed out at the giant spider, dragging her whip across the creature's thorax. The barbs of her whip tore open the beast's body, and innards spilled onto the mucky ground, before the creature collapsed and ceased to breathe. Vekni fired a Kensai's shot arrow at the last remaining injured and incapacitated giant spider. The arrow plunged into the beast's skull, killing it. Walking past the burning trees, the adventurers continued towards the pond and the stone door in the rock wall. Vekni made small ice bridges and crossed the pond over to the landing near the entrance to the small hallway leading to the stone door. On the small landing, the adventurers observed a small stone chest. Sorin cast Identify in the chest and found it was not magical. Vekni examined the hallway and door. She found the hallway was 15 feet deep. She determined the hallway was expertly excavated from the rock wall. Vekni observed a painting above the stone door. The painting was of a strange green leaf, similar to the leaf on a sigil that the adventurers saw in Lorgan's tavern. To the left of the door was 2 large rectangular indents, and 2 additional rectangular indents to the right of the door. Inside the stone chest, Sorin found a multitude of rectangular stone tablets with art chiseled into them. There were 20 total tablets inside. Sorin immediately recognized this as some kind of a puzzle. Sorin first thought the tablet with a rose on it might be relevant to the puzzle, as the white rose was the sigil of Ferelden, and King Dokkan Swiftwater was known to frequent Epona's bog. Vekni placed an angry lizard tablet, closed-eyed snake tablet, smoking spear tablet, and a crying cat tablet into the indents around the door, but nothing happened. Sorin carefully considered the meaning behind each tablet. His thoughts were as follows. The angry lizard represented the lizard folk of Frank. The rose represented blues. The crying cat represented lions. The smoking spearhead represented Forte. The close-eyed snake represented chaos. The burning tower represented Slay. The skeleton wearing a crown represented Furia. The smiling dog sigil represented a faction Sorin was not familiar with. Vekni inserted the tablets representing Frank, Lions, Slay, and the smiling dog tablet, but nothing happened once again. An idea occurred to Sorin. He placed all 4 smiling dog tablets into the rectangular indents. Sorin heard mechanisms and gears shifting and moving, followed by a loud rumbling. The stone door swung open. The adventurers entered the hidden settlement they had found, the Doghouse, a collection of wooden buildings built inside a cave. The Doghouse had wooden signs with many slogans, advocating peace, smoking, joking, cheering, and beer. The architecture was wooden, and the setup in the settlement appeared to be random and without rhyme or reason. Sorin and Vekni entered the medicine man's quarters and met the leader of the Doghouse. The medicine man was an older human covered in comically long white hair coming from his nose and ears. He had a long white beard but a bald head. He wore green pajamas and puffed on some kind of pipe. A pungent, skunky smell came from green smoke that emanated from his pipe. The entire room was full of this smoke. The medicine man's quarters was the largest building in the Doghouse, and the walls of the main room were lined with many, many books. The medicine man introduced himself with a, "Sup," and greeted the adventurers with cheer and beer. The medicine man rolled some kind of green vegetation into a blunt and handed it to Vekni. Vekni was unfamiliar with the substance, but as an experienced cigar smoker, Vekni smoked it just as she would a cigar. Vekni did not inhale any of the smoke while puffing on the blunt. Vekni felt a burning in the back of her throat and coughed a bit. Medicine Man prepared another blunt, lit it, and handed it to Sorin. The medicine man told Sorin he looked like a cool dude and implored him to smoke and joke. Sorin told a joke about not trusting stairs, then smoked the blunt. Sorin took heavy tokes of the lit vegetation and was greatly affected by the drug. Sorin became very giggly and dopey with a perpetual smile on his face. He felt a bit sleepy and experienced some cottonmouth, as well as a hunger for something sweet. Medicine Man, Vekni, and Sorin joked around, drank some extremely hoppy ale, and spoke a bit further. Medicine Man advised the group he assumed Sorin came to the doghouse to see King Doken, due to Sorin's attire and the ring that he wore. Medicine Man added that Doken was his best bud. Vekni asked about Captain Ratalac, and the Medicine Man stated the Minotaur captain of the Misfit Bastards left the doghouse a short time ago. Sorin revealed Doken was his stepdad, and he didn't want the king to find out he smoked the herbs. He began exhibiting paranoia and strange behavior. Sorin casted dispel magic on himself, and found he was not under the effect of a spell. Sorin asked to take the interesting looking books lining the walls, and his gracious host permitted the young wizard to borrow them as long as he returned them. Sorin told more jokes about dentistry and masturbation, getting along really well with the leader of the doghouse. The adventurers left the medicine man's quarters and entered Cannabis Cafe and Inn. Inside, they met the barista, a half-elf named Autumn. They observed a group of 4 playing cards at a table. These 4 consisted of the half-elf bard, King Doken Swiftwater of Ferelden; Gragas Stormbringer, the dwarven cleric and member of the Order of the Burning Fist that Sorin and Vekni dispatched to return Lady Epona to Chieftain Snorian of Afrai; Pureblood, a fierce Black Orc warrior and member of Dogs. Lastly, Melvin, a human wizard from Ferelden. Melvin was familiar to Sorin and around the same age. Standing guard behind King Doken was Uldrum Brownfinger, a dirty-looking, smelly, armored dwarf. A half-dozen dwarves and human guards, donning the white rose sigil of Ferelden on their armor, stood with him. Also inside the bar was Pink Mango, a human. She was demure, olive-skinned, with wide hips, a curvy bosom, and thick, luscious lips. This beauty wore pink armor and a pink veil. Vekni and Sorin recognized her from Lorgan's Tavern. The ebony human knight from Queensgrace and Lorgan's Tavern was present as well. He was pacing back and forth in the tavern. The last individual in this establishment was Fenris, a middle-aged human male in a brown cloak. He was the other Dogs member the adventurers saw in Lorgan's Tavern. Vekni spoke with Autumn and paid for a room. Autumn provided the pirate with a new stack of wanted posters. Sorin ordered an algae brew beer and began to partake in the free bar nuts. The young wizard grabbed handfuls of nuts and legumes, spilling many of them all over himself, and shoved as many into his mouth as he possibly could. Vekni and Sorin spoke with Gragas. He admitted he was doing as the two asked, escorting Lady Epona to a fry, when he and the female lizard folk were attacked by harpies and bugbears while ascending Comet Mountain. Gragas explained he fell and twisted his ankle during these tribulations, which gave the bugbears an opportunity to kidnap Epona. He added that he hobbled his dwarven tuchus to the doghouse to rest and recuperate from his injury. Gragas told Vekni and Sorin he believed the bugbears had some kind of a camp near Comet Mountain where they may have taken Epona. Vekni was unhappy with Gragas upon hearing this, and she fretted over what malady might befall Mictlean and Edgerin during their journey to Queensgrace. An extremely high Sorin waved his wand in the air in an unbalanced, exaggerated fashion, while ritual casting his unseen servant spell. King Doken Swiftwater, who was a half-elf wearing a silk blue tunic and cape, noticed his stepson Sorin. Doken was adorned lavishly, with a golden crown, gem-studded rings on each finger, and fine black boots. Doken greeted the young wizard and mentioned that he lost his favorite loot in a game of cards to the Black Orc at the table. Sorin asked Pureblood, the Black Orc, to return the loot and cast his suggestion. Pureblood was affected by the spell and handed the loot back to the Ferelden king. Doken thanked Sorin and the two spoke for a bit. Doken stated he came to the doghouse to hang out with his good friend, the Medicine Man, and to meet with Radalak, captain of the Misfit Bastards. Doken explained Radalak was en route to the Cutthroat Docks to purchase a new ship and replace lost crewmates. Sorin implored Doken not to tell the Queen he was doing drugs. Vekni watched King Doken and Sorin interact from the bar. She observed Sorin did not appear particularly respectful or reverent of his half-elf companion. It appeared the half-elf, while dressed lavishly with fine garments and jewelry, possessed the demeanor and speech patterns of a young boy. Sorin asked Doken how his mother, the Queen of Ferelden, Genlia Avacine Swiftwater, fared. Doken replied stating Queen Genlia was a sweet woman, but always nagged him to bring the young human wizard, Melvin, along with him whenever he left Ferelden. Sorin recalled Melvin was a young mage, often present in the royal court, and that Queen Genlia seemed to have a particular liking for this human. Sorin and Melvin spoke for a time about magic and arcane knowledge. Melvin explained he had made progress in illusion magic. He challenged Sorin to a contest. Melvin suggested they both conjure an image for the king, and whichever image was best would dictate which of them was the greatest wizard of Ferelden. Sorin asked Melvin if they could compete in the morning instead. Melvin scoffed and admonished Sorin for not being ready at all times to prove his magical prowess. Sorin, misliking Melvin's words, used his station as Prince of Ferelden, honorary lord and master of spells, to humiliate Melvin and ordered him to fetch Sorin a drink. Doken asked Sorin where his sister Vess was, and Sorin answered he believed she was in Queensgrace. Sorin asked Doken if he knew where Marigold Mandred was. Doken replied he would take Sorin to Marigold. He explained she secreted herself deep in the bog, just like her aunt, Ethel Greentooth, did in the fetid garden of Thaddeus. Vekni sauntered over to where Sorin and King Doken were speaking. Sorin introduced the two. Vekni immediately accosted the king for ordering the assassination of Captain Mundo and the mutiny aboard the Bastard Sire. Doken looked nervous and denied having anything to do with either thing. Vekni confided in Doken that she defeated the Misfit Bastards on the seas, leaving them without a ship. Vekni asked to play blackjack with King Doken and the Black Orc, Pureblood. Doken admitted he was out of gold, and remarked that no matter how much he taxed his people, the gold always seemed to fly right out of the Ferelden coffers. Sorin wished to be dealt in as well, so Sorin, Vekni, and Pureblood played blackjack, with Pureblood acting as dealer. Sorin and Vekni played several hands of blackjack against Pureblood, winning most of them. Sorin asked Pureblood a bit about himself. Pureblood said he currently served the Medicine Man and dogs, but his clan of Black Orcs hailed from an island to the northeast of Thaddeus. Pureblood explained his clan was enslaved by a dragon, and about a quarter century ago, a group of warriors, including King Doken, came to the island and slayed the dragon, freeing Pureblood's people from their bondage. Sorin and Vekni realized this group was the Order of the Burning Fist. Doken regaled Vekni with tales of her son, Kevlian Greystone, and the adventures the two had as members of the Burning Fist. She was very impressed with the tales she heard of her boy. After briefly discussing sleeping arrangements, Dokkan revealed that he spent most nights at the doghouse sharing a room with Pink Mango, the demure, darker-skinned woman with pink armor and a busty build. Sorin misliked hearing this and told the king that he would be sleeping in Sorin's room tonight. King Dokkan Swiftwater, Lord Sorin Avicine, and Melvin shared a room upstairs in the Cannabis Cafe and Inn. After a few more hours of drinking, Vekni went up to the door of Sorin and King Dokkan's room. Uldrum Brownfinger rudely advised Vekni she was not permitted to enter. Vekni attempted to push Uldrum away from the door so she could open it. Vekni banged on the door, calling to Sorin. Uldrum and his men drew their arms and attacked Vekni. Uldrum swung at her with a dagger, while the guards used swords. Vekni easily dodged their attacks with her patient defense, barely moving while standing in front of the door. A groggy Sorin opened the door and yelled at the group in front of his room, clearly agitated that he was awakened. He ordered Uldrum and his men to stay their blades, and added Vekni was permitted to go wherever she pleased. Vekni and Uldrum bickered for a bit, and Sorin chastised Uldrum for disrespecting his friend. Vekni went to sleep in the room with Sorin, King Dokkan, and Melvin. Before laying down for the night, Vekni noticed Dokkan was cozily snuggled up with a pillow and blanket, sleeping soundly. The half-elf did not appear to have a care in the world. After awakening, Vekni and Sorin went downstairs, where they observed King Dokkan, Gragas, Melvin, Uldrum, and Pink Mango sitting together at a table. Vekni pulled up a chair and joined them. Sorin and Melvin discussed the terms of their illusion contest. Melvin asked Sorin to wager his title as the Ferelden Master of Spells. Melvin offered a spell scroll in return. The scroll was Finger of Death, a spell he learned from King Dokkan's friend, Odoacer, who once knew no magic at all, but after sacrificing many elven lives to his god, was bequeathed with powerful magics. Melvin said he trained with Odoacer when he visited the Ferelden court some time ago. Sorin declined, stating that to wager his title, Melvin must offer either 1 million gold or a scroll of wish. Melvin admitted he could not wager either. Sorin attempted to convince Melvin to wager his spellbook against Sorin's abyssal spellbook, but failed to persuade the young mage, so the contest of illusion magic did not take place. As Vekni and Sorin left the Cannabis Cafe and Inn to go shopping, Vekni showed animosity and disdain for Uldrum. Sorin recalled that night 10 years ago. The night he and Vesiesh brought down the kingdom of Kazkaroom. He remembered that Uldrum played a pivotal role in his sister's success. On the orders of King Dokkan, Queen Genlia, and Sir Duncan, Sorin, Vesiesh, Dakarth, Zombina, and Uldrum burned the castle, murdered the royal family, stole the Eye of Zulbilt, and conjured duplicates of dead and missing Burning Fist members. Of course, Sorin was just a young boy when this transpired. He fell asleep pretty early in the night, and Ves told him most of what happened afterwards. Sorin and Vekni arrived at the deluxe shop and smithy, where they met the store owner, Norsk Berserker. Norsk was a middle-aged, balding human, chewing on a leafy substance that appeared to partially stain his teeth green. The duo looked over Norsk's wares for a time. After a bit of haggling, Vekni sold one Reaper's polearm to Norsk for 850 gold. Sorin paid 600 gold for 2 potions of blur. Vekni flirted a bit with Norsk and asked if she could get some kind of discount. Norsk offered her a 25% discount on any one item if Vekni agreed to go on a date with him. She gave him a kiss on the cheek and haggled for 35% off at the cost of a date. Sorin purchased a wand of fireball from Norsk for 6,525 gold. Vekni used her 35% discount to purchase a Tome of Understanding for 17,875 gold. Vekni purchased an amulet of natural armor for 6,000 gold. Sorin purchased 2 scrolls of silence for a total of 400 gold. Next, the adventurers made a stop at the doghouse jail, but found it empty. Sorin searched the small building and found a healing potion inside a desk. Vekni felt the urge to tinkle, so she made a stop at the outhouse. Inside, she located a circular metal door in the floor of the small building. She lifted it and uncovered some kind of a man-made gravel tunnel. Vekni and Sorin traveled down the tunnel for a full day, finding a ladder at the end. The ladder led to a concealed entryway back to the plains in close proximity to the burnt husk of Serv's tavern. Vekni noted the shortcut on the map the group received from Merciless. Then she and Sorin took the tunnel back to the doghouse. Vekni stopped by the deluxe shop in Smithy, where she apologized to Norsk Berserker for missing their date. Vekni and Norsk went back to his modest home. They shared a meal consisting of pheasant, green onions, and a side of mixed vegetables. Vekni pulled out the bottle of rum she still had left over and shared it with the man. The pair held hands and enjoyed the pleasant evening. Afterwards, the pair visited the Cannabis Cafe and Inn. Sorin, King Doken, Uldrum, Pink Mango, Gragas, and some others were inside. Sorin suspected his stepfather had some kind of inappropriate relationship with the busty woman in pink armor. He questioned King Doken about his relationship with Pinky. Doken assured Sorin he had done nothing with Pink Mango that would disrespect the queen and betray her trust. Doken advised Vekni and Sorin he would bring them to Marigold now. Sorin asked Gragas to come with them, but he said his ankle still hurt. Doken strummed his lute for a few moments, and a blue portal appeared out of thin air. Vekni and Sorin stepped through the portal and entered into what looked like Epona's bog. There was nothing around them, aside from the swamp and a path straight ahead. The portal closed, and Doken was nowhere to be seen.
Dexter scouted the path ahead, which appeared to be somewhere deep in Epona's bog. This area was strange, as the sound of wildlife was not present. There was only the bubbling sound of the muck. Dexter came to a section with a small stream leading to a pond. He observed a black circular shadow inside the pond, which appeared to be quite large and took up nearly the entire body of water. Dexter observed humanoid creatures with claws, forked tongues, and greenish-blue skin lying in wait throughout this area, hiding behind trees. These monsters looked sickly, possibly rotting. They wore clothing, but the garments were old, mottled, and decayed. All of these creatures were fairly still and looking in the same direction. In the direction of Sorin and Vekni. Vekni speculated King Doken may have led the pair into a trap of sorts. Sorin casted mage armor, preparing himself for a possible fight. Vekni drew her bow and notched an arrow. Sorin and Vekni carefully advanced towards the area that Dexter scouted out. Dexter took a closer look at the shadowy object inside the pond. The owl observed a huge frog-like creature with multiple tentacles and a stalk of eyeballs. Sorin casted dancing lights and twirled the 4 separate light sources about the area like fireflies, illuminating the entire battlefield at separate different moments. The humanoid creatures did not react to this in any way, keeping completely still even when illuminated. Vekni observed the lack of reaction from these beasts, and she speculated they might be bewitched by Marigold, as she was known to be a powerful magic user. Sorin upcasted invisibility on himself and Vekni, planning to slip by the creatures without a fight. Sorin and Vekni carefully snuck through the wet, mucky swamp, doing their best to avoid the creatures. Dexter perched himself on Sorin's shoulder, and the young wizard saw through the familiar's eyes so he could quietly navigate the wet bog in the dark. Vekni progressed through the area gracefully and with skill, finding solid footholds and moving about in an efficient manner. Sorin held onto her and followed Vekni's every step. As the pair made it further into the dangerous area, they heard a startling loud female voice echo through the swamp, breaking the eerie silence. The voice said,
"Silly goose."
The behavior of the silent and still, ghoulish creatures changed. The beasts became animated. They sniffed at the air, grunted and growled, and began to move about the area wildly, almost ravenously. Vekni and Sorin continued through the swamp. Vekni's foot sunk deep into a particularly deep section of muck. Her step made a loud, sucking noise. Some of the ghouls became alerted to the elven pirate's presence. 3 of the beasts closed in on and attacked Vekni. They could not see her, but snapped at the air with sharp teeth and lunged at nothingness with their claws. The creatures were unable to connect with the pirate captain. Vekni disengaged and moved away from the beasts, hoping they would not be able to follow her steps. The creatures turned towards Vekni's direction and growled. Sorin disengaged as well and moved away from those that hunted his ally, slipping into the pond. The creatures attacked Vekni again, but failed to hurt the agile female high elf. Vekni disengaged again and continued to flee. This time the beasts lost track of her though. Vekni and Sorin were now separated, but the duo continued to make their way through the ghoul-filled swamp. Vekni noticed that ever since she heard that girl's voice, the ghouls had been acting alert and frantic, like they knew that prey was nearby. Vekni approached a clearing through the trees and observed a horde of the creatures ahead. From both sides of the thick trees, she heard rustling and growling, as though more of the creatures were arriving at their location. The 2 adventurers were absolutely positively surrounded. Vekni concentrated and used her senses to locate Sorin. She reunited with the young wizard in the midst of the growling, murderous creatures. Sorin moved his dancing lights amongst the tree line, and everywhere the light touched, he observed more and more of the ghouls stumbling through the wood towards them, sniffing and snapping at the air. Something seemed to be drawing the beasts to Sorin and Vekni. An eye stalk emerged from the pond and looked around the area. Sorin and Vekni were keenly aware the eye belonged to a humongous amphibian that was beneath the water. Vekni examined the branches and vines that were suspended high over the clearing ahead of her and surmised they did not appear to be naturally occurring flora. Sorin continued to push forward, sneaking through the horde of zombies. Vekni became quite concerned, considering the quantity and density of the ghouls in their vicinity, but she warily followed her companion into possibly becoming surrounded by their deadly foes. Sorin slickly passed by one of the creatures and a cluster of its friends without being noticed at all. It began to seem as though the adventurers would coolly pass by this horde completely unscathed. Vekni looked on with worry as her young friend was completely surrounded by creatures and they were tightly packed in on all sides. Sorin walked a bit further through the horde and just barely made enough noise to alert the ghouls. The creatures absolutely dogpiled Sorin. They slammed into him from every angle, and while they could not see him, the commotion caught the attention of others, who also rushed over to attack. The ravenous, drooling creatures slashed and bit Sorin, badly hurting and paralyzing him. Vekni observed the ghouls dogpiling an area ahead. She cursed Sorin for ignoring her warnings. The pirate captain called out to the witch that she believed controlled these beasts. "Marigold, call off your ghouls!" Vekni fired 2 arrows at one of the ghouls, badly hurting it and dropping her invisibility. Ghouls swarmed towards Vekni, and those surrounding Sorin attacked again. Sorin broke from his paralysis and was able to cast the shield spell, just as 4 ghouls attempted to tear at him with their sharp teeth. The bites missed, with one side of the sharp teeth clanging off Sorin's magic barrier. 4 more ghouls slashed at Sorin with razor-sharp claws. Only one of the creatures was able to slip past the wizard's barrier with its attack, but the single slash was enough to bring down the wounded mage. Sorin fell to the mucky ground of Epona's bog. Vekni called out again. "Marigold, the son of King Dokkan is down!" Vekni fired 2 arrows at an advancing ghoul, striking it in the gut with both, then took a defensive stance after repositioning. Vekni heard a woman's voice echo through the swamp, rhyming strange words in common.
Snake skin and curdled milk, a halfling's eye and Dovan silk.
There was a sudden change in the horde of ghouls devouring Sorin. The creatures were in the process of ravenously pouncing on his body to consume him, but their bodies, suddenly and seemingly against the creatures' wills, convulsed and lifted their heads from Sorin's fallen form. In unison, each and every ghoul's gaze snapped towards Vekni. The ghouls swarmed towards the high elf pirate, but struggled to keep up with her impressive speed. While fleeing, Vekni turned and fired an arrow at the ghoul with 2 arrows in its stomach. This arrow pierced the beast's brain, killing it. The ghouls, very suspiciously, began fighting as one, with some trying to head Vekni off, while others came from behind. It appeared as though the creatures were pieces on a chessboard, moving strategically to pincer and trap the high elf pirate. Vekni used Step of the Wind and dodged in between the ghouls to double back towards the downed Sorin, who was no longer surrounded. The ghouls dashed back towards Vekni, fanning out in a formation which seemed like a strangely intelligent maneuver for creatures such as these. Vekni reached Sorin's body and stood over it. She drew Ignis and hurled it towards the horde of monsters. The javelin zipped through the beasts and slammed into the chest of one of the ghouls in the back row. The tip of Ignis pierced the creature and electricity burst from its chest, frying its entire body and leaving the monster a lifeless smoking husk. Ghouls in the wake of Ignis's path were shot with lightning power and took considerable damage as well. Vekni ran back through the ghouls again, leaping into the air and delivering a jumping knee to the chin of one of the beasts. The creature's neck broke and it died, as Vekni continued on her way past it with her Step of the Wind ability. The ghouls continued to behave intelligently, this time managing to surround Vekni as she fled. Vekni lit and threw 3 of her dynamite sticks at the thickest mass of ghouls. 5 already injured ghouls were vaporized by the blasts, while others suffered significant damage from the explosions. Having cleared a small path through the creatures, Vekni channeled more of her ki and used Step of the Wind to flee a good distance away from the monsters. As she moved past a couple of the ghouls, they slashed out at her with their claws, and one of them connected, slashing her right cheek and drawing blood. Sorin's eyes shot open and he gasped, inhaling foul air, awakening in the mud of Epona's bog. That woman's voice echoed through the battlefield. "Tee, I'm not going to kill you, silly gooses." Immediately following these words, all the feral, bloodthirsty creatures stopped, and whichever pose they were in, their movement seemingly frozen. The eyes of the ghouls still moved, however, following Vekni and Sorin, staring hungrily at their prey with violent, deadly intent. The creatures were now statues, the only movement coming from their eyes. Vekni ran over to Sorin and did a baseball slide towards her friend, immediately checking on his well-being. Sorin said he was fine, but he was covered in wounds and spitting up blood. He casted mold earth to clean off his dirty, mud-soaked garments. Vekni breathed heavily, her chest heaving after expending so much of her ki to survive the battle. After a brief rest in a mud hut Sorin created with his magic, the pair continued down the path. After an hour or so of travel, they came upon a mansion with pillars and vines ahead of the front door. Next to the mansion was a small wooden shack. Sorin sent his unseen servant to knock on the front door of the mansion. The vines ceded away from the door, and a short time after the servant knocked, the double doors to the mansion creaked open slowly.